I herald his beginning. I herald your end. I herald Galactus.
While Galactus, the Devourer of Worlds, recently made his big screen debut, his history in the comics goes all the way back to 1966's Fantastic Four, number 48. Born from a universe older than the Big Bang, countless cultures have told legends of Galactus' origins, but every species sees Galactus differently, their mortal minds unable to comprehend his true form. And now you can see him for yourself in Marvel Studios' The Fantastic Four: First Steps on Disney+. This immensely powerful being sustains himself by consuming the life energy of entire planets. To find those snacks, he's employed a long line of powerful heralds, despite the fact that they keep rebelling against him, again and again. Yeah, he's pretty hard to work for. To document his decades of comic history, we've assembled a Galactus-sized recap to cover all of his greatest secrets, like where did Galactus come from? Is he merely a force for destruction, or does he serve some greater role in the universe? How did he fit into Marvel's Secret Wars? And how did he run into Deadpool and Squirrel Girl? We're here to answer all those questions and more. This is Marvel Recap Galactus, with a special shout out to the official handbook of the Marvel Universe research team and the Marvel Studios story team for their help. To tell the story of Galactus, we have to travel back eons before the Big Bang to the 6th cosmos. You see, the universe that was first seen in 1939's Marvel Comics number 1 was actually the 7th one to be created, with each universe being born from the destruction of the previous one. One of the last remaining planets during the 6th cosmos was Ta, a super advanced world dedicated to science. Highest in the ranks of Ta's citizens were the Scienceers, scientific adventurers that acted much like our modern-day superheroes. The greatest Scienceer was Taya, who grew a baby named Galan in a womb tube of her own design, intending him to someday surpass her as Ta's greatest explorer of the fantastic. In time, Galan grew up to become a celebrated Scienceer himself, only to discover that his universe was ending and that Ta was one of the last worlds in existence. Over the years, various legends have given different reasons for the destruction of the 6th cosmos. Some blamed it on a natural cycle of death and rebirth that periodically led to a big crunch, followed by a new Big Bang. According to Norse god Odin, it was caused by the Galactus seed, a powerful seed that is planted at the heart of each cosmos' world tree. When one opens, it spawns the next universe, the next world tree, and even the next Galactus. In the dystopian alternate reality known as Universe X, the Kree Supreme Intelligence blamed the end of the 6th universe on the efforts of the giant cosmic beings known as the Celestials, survivors of the first universe, known as the First Firmament. It was their process of being born in the heart of stars and planets that destroyed Ta and the rest of the universe. More recently, the destruction was blamed on the Black Winter, a giant being that devours entire universes, and who we'll see a lot more of later on. On Ta, the inhabitants started suffering from radiation poisoning. When they could find no cure, Galan and a few survivors escaped their planet in a starship, determined to find what existed outside of space and time. While cosmic rays killed the rest of his crew, Galan heard the dying voice of the sentience of the universe. It offered him a chance to combine with it to create a new being that would survive into the next universe, a galactic ravager that shall be Galactus. When the 7th cosmos was born, Galan's ship emerged, only to spend eons traveling through the void of space. Inside, Galan slowly learned to control his growing cosmic power, creating a bodysuit to help him regulate his awesome energies. At some point, Galactus' ship moved into orbit around the planet Archeopia. The ship circled the planet for years, until it was targeted by an armada of invading warships. The battle caused Galactus to finally emerge from his cocoon and devastate the invading space fleet. Ravenous, Galactus turned his attention to the planet, stripping it of its life-sustaining energies. A small fleet of ships managed to escape, and over the years, the survivors would connect with others who lived through Galactus, consuming their planet, eventually becoming the galactic nomads known as the Wanderers. When Galactus was sated, he sank to the planet and surveyed the destruction he had caused, asking himself, "Am I merely an agent of disorder and destruction?" His answer? No. The power cosmic can be wielded for any purpose, creation as well as annihilation. To prove that, he spent millennia rebuilding the remains of the Archeopian system into a massive world ship, one so huge that planets orbited it as if it were a sun. He named it Ta-2 after his long-destroyed homeworld. He held no anger towards his victims, saying, "Though I ravage worlds to live, I bear no malice toward any living thing. I simply do what I must to survive." Galactus believed he had a higher purpose, or as he put it, "And why must Galactus survive? For no matter how many worlds I devour, how many civilizations I destroy, it is my destiny to one day give back to the universe infinitely more than I have taken from it. So speaks Galactus." Whether Galactus was ultimately good or evil, he was definitely lonely. That's one of the reasons he spent his existence recruiting different creatures to become his heralds. These powerful beings spent their time seeking out new worlds for Galactus to devour, until they inevitably rebelled against him. And then he'd move on to the next one. No one knows the total number of heralds Galactus has had during his eons of life, but his first companion was his creation, Tyrant, who he created not long after emerging from his incubator. But as you might have guessed from his name, Tyrant soon craved conquest. Becoming jealous of his creator, they fought, leaving Galactus to reduce him in stature and power, then banish him to the farthest edge of the universe. Galactus's earliest confirmed herald was the Fallen One, a being powered by black matter, described as the binding halo by which galaxies are made solvent. But he proved too cruel for Galactus's tastes, and the Fallen One was dismissed from his service. Over the following millennia, the former herald would periodically track down his former master, seeking revenge, only to be defeated time and again. One of Galactus's most surprising heralds has to be Lord Kevin Plunder, also known as the Jungle Warrior, Kazar. After being stranded in Earth's distant past, Kazar found himself fighting a time-traveling child version of Thanos, and teaming up with the Avengers of 1 million BC. That's when he discovered that Galactus was about to devour Earth. He struck a deal with the big guy, offering to travel the universe, looking for inhabited worlds for him. Galactus agreed and imbued him with a portion of his energy, the power cosmic. The pair traveled to the God Quarry, where they joined the multiversal Avengers in fighting Mephisto and the multiversal Masters of Evil. And Galactus even became an honorary Avenger. We know that Galactus had at least one more herald, as we got a glimpse of an unnamed herald when Galactus attacked the Earth in 1582. He was fought off by the Italian scientist Galileo, who was an agent of Leonardo da Vinci's secret Brotherhood of the Shield, which would eventually inspire the super spy organization, S.H.I.E.L.D. Eventually, Galactus would encounter his most famous herald, the Silver Surfer, who started out life as Norrin Radd. Like Galan, Radd was originally a scientist, this time on the technologically advanced planet of Zenla. Radd was frustrated that there was nothing new to explore, and his people had lost the thrill of discovery. He confessed this frustration to his love, Shalabal, admitting that he could find no satisfaction with the futuristic delights of Zenla. But when his world was targeted by the Devourer, Radd offered to become Galactus's herald in exchange for sparing Zenla. Galactus shared the power cosmic with him, coating him in a silver skin and granting him a flying board that could travel the cosmos. Norrin Radd was reborn as the Silver Surfer. Norrin reveled in his new power, excited that he'd finally get the lifetime of endless adventure he dreamt about. He returned to the planet to say one final farewell to his love, Shalabal. She begged him to take her with him, but he refused, saying, "Where soars the Silver Surfer, there must he soar alone." Eventually, Galactus's hunger drove him to attempt to consume the Earth again, only to discover it was now protected by the super team, the Fantastic Four. The team consisted of the super genius and super stretchable Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic, Sue Storm, who could turn invisible and wielded powerful force fields as the Invisible Girl, and later, the Invisible Woman, Ben Grimm, the rocky behemoth known as The Thing, and the hot-headed, fiery hero, Johnny Storm, also known as the Human Torch. When Galactus first encountered them, as seen in 1966's Fantastic Four number 48, none of them could have known that they would eventually become both the World Devourer's most bitter enemies and his most trusted acquaintances. The team was first warned of the coming of the World Devourer by Uatu, a member of the alien race known as the Watchers. The Fantastic Four soon found themselves fighting the Surfer and Galactus himself. However, the Fantastic Four's close friend and blind sculptor, Alicia Masters, was able to convince the Surfer to rebel against his master. The battle ended when Uatu sent Johnny to find the Ultimate Nullifier, a weapon powerful enough to destroy the universe. It was also powerful enough to scare the heck out of Galactus, who agreed to never attack the Earth again in exchange for its return. But before leaving the Earth, Galactus punished the Surfer by stripping him of his ability to leave the planet, thus denying him the excitement and exploration he'd always craved. But soon, Galactus couldn't find worlds to devour on his own, so he sent his cyborg minion, the Punisher, to find the Silver Surfer on Earth. No, not that Punisher. Although, in one alternate timeline, that Punisher would become the herald known as Cosmic Ghost Rider. But we don't have time to get into that here. Anyway, the old cyborg Punisher had a quick tussle with the Fantastic Four, then vanished. Galactus demanded that the Fantastic Four find his minion, or he'd smash a giant meteor into Earth. The team agreed, traveling into the microscopic microverse to find it. Just as Galactus reluctantly targeted the Earth, the Surfer returned and agreed to find a suitable meteor for Galactus to consume. Afterwards, the Surfer demanded his freedom, but Galactus refused, returning the Surfer to his earthly confinement. Clearly, Galactus needed a new, more willing herald. He found one when he encountered Nova Corps member Galan, who he transformed into Airwalker. Airwalker proved more obedient than the Surfer, and they soon bonded, with Galactus finding a kindred spirit in him. But that growing friendship wouldn't last long, as Airwalker was killed by the alien race known as the Ovoids. To save some part of his beloved herald, Galactus created a robot duplicate to serve him, filling it with a part of Airwalker's dwindling life spark. Galactus then sent the robot Airwalker to Earth, where he used his size-changing trumpet to declare the end of the world. He battled the Fantastic Four and the Silver Surfer, who soon discovered he was a robot when he was greatly damaged, seemingly beyond repair. That's when Galactus arrived, threatening to doom the Earth if the Surfer didn't return to his service. The Surfer refused, leading to a giant brawl through Coney Island. During the battle, Reed Richards managed to board Galactus' ship and threatened to destroy it if he didn't leave Earth. Galactus responded by threatening to destroy Earth if Reed didn't give him back his ship. So, Reed backed down, with the Surfer ready to follow Galactus into space. That's when Reed revealed that he'd sabotaged the controls of Galactus' ship to send him to the parallel dimension known as the Negative Zone, where there were enough worlds to sustain him for countless ages. But eventually, Galactus and his ship returned to the main Marvel universe, where he was tracked down by Nova Corps member Pyrus Krill, who was trying to find his missing commander and friend, Galan. Galactus told him the story of Airwalker, and impressed with Krill's drive, offered to make him his new herald, Fire Lord. Galactus next turned his hunger towards consuming Ego, the living planet, only to have his will thwarted again. Frustrated, Galactus sent Fire Lord to Earth to contact the Asgardian god, Thor, which led to the Herald battling Thor and the Olympian god, Hercules. That prompted Galactus to personally ask Thor for assistance in defeating Ego, who he described as a mad monster who threatened the universe. Thor and Hercules agreed, and the pair traveled with Galactus to Ego, who had definitely gone mad. Thor, Hercules, and Firelord managed to fight their way through to the planet's core, discovering Ego's brain. A quick toss of Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, proved to be enough of a distraction to allow Galactus to attach giant thrusters to Ego, sending him hurtling into deep space. But Galactus regretted the necessity of his actions, saying that were he not Galactus, and were Ego not mad, they might have been comrades. Wishing to become a free man with his own destiny, Firelord asked Galactus to release him from his servitude, with Thor seconding the request. But Galactus would only free him if Thor provided a replacement herald, which Thor found in the Destroyer, a suit of mystical Asgardian armor. Galactus agreed, bestowing the armor with the power cosmic to make the Destroyer his mindless slave. And with that, Galactus left Earth, freeing Firelord to find a new destiny. That mindless slave herald seemed to work out pretty well for Galactus, as the destroyer soon discovered a ripe new target for his hunger: Counter-Earth. This was a version of the Earth created by the High Evolutionary, a geneticist obsessed with evolving new forms of intelligent life. Located on the opposite side of the sun from Earth and hidden behind a screen of anti-particle force, Counter-Earth had remained hidden from Galactus's previous heralds. The High Evolutionary sought the help of the Fantastic Four in stopping Galactus. The Thing battled the destroyer in space until Galactus arrived to consume the planet. He gave the High Evolutionary and the Fantastic Four a choice: either find a planet willing to be consumed or choose an inhabited planet for annihilation. With the Fantastic Four unwilling to choose a planet to destroy, the High Evolutionary challenged Galactus to a battle in the skies over Counter-Earth. That is, until the Fantastic Four arrived with a vision of a planet that was not only suitable for Galactus's needs, but apparently wanted to be devoured. He eagerly began to devour it, only to find it was a trap. The planet's energies attacked Galactus, and for the first time in an eon, Galactus screamed. That gave the High Evolutionary the opening he needed to use his evolutionary ray to transform the Devourer into pure organic energy. Why did the planet disagree with Galactus? It was actually Pop-Up, home planet of the shape-changing alien imp, the Impossible Man. However, all Pop-Upians shared a hive mind and were essentially one life form. That meant there wasn't actually any real-life energy for Galactus to devour, and that pain that Galactus felt was a case of terminal indigestion. As for the Destroyer, we later learned that during the standoff with the High Evolutionary, the Asgardian trickster Loki took the opportunity to sneak into Galactus's world ship and steal the Destroyer for himself. He later used it to attack his adoptive brother Thor, because of course he did. He's Loki. We met the next herald after the Fantastic Four tracked down Galactus to gain his help in defeating the immortal wizard, the Sphinx, who had absorbed the entire knowledge of the planet Xandar, home of the Nova Corps. With his newfound powers, the Sphinx planned to destroy the Earth, and the only power that could stop him was Galactus. Reed agreed to release Galactus from his vow to never attack Earth again. However, Galactus had a further demand. The Fantastic Four must also subdue a new herald for him. As his previous heralds had been hampered by their pesky morals, Galactus chose the alien despot, Tyrant. Galactus used the power cosmic to transform him into Tyrant the Tamer, giving him the power to command rock and stone and a cosmic axe to wield. Galactus kept up his end of the bargain, defeating the Sphinx by stripping him of his powers and trapping him in an endless time loop. Relieved of his promise to spare the Earth, Galactus swore that he would one day return, and on that day, the Earth shall most surely die. But Galactus soon learned that amoral alien overlords don't make the best employees, as Terax immediately went rogue, enslaving a planet to his will. When Galactus tried to reclaim him, Terax escaped into the one place he knew Galactus couldn't follow, a black hole. Sensing the power of Earth's light-emitting mutant and future X-Men, Dazzler, Galactus granted her the power cosmic and sent her into the black hole to retrieve Terax. One of Galactus's robot drones, R-11, suspected that Galactus harbored some feelings for Dazzler since he'd helped her survive the black hole. Could Galactus secretly be a Dazzler fanboy? But Galactus felt only emptiness. For though he knows the full gamut of human emotions, love, hate, pity, fear, even compassion, he cannot allow himself to respond to them. To do so would make it impossible for him to continue to consume worlds, to live. Meanwhile, the roller-skating disco mutant defeated Terax, returning him to Galactus's world ship. Galactus was about to punish his wayward herald until Dazzler argued that Terax was just following his nature, as Galactus does. Galactus chose not to further punish Terax and kept him as his herald, although Dazzler was never sure if her words had any effect on him, especially since Galactus also ignored her pleas to return her to Earth. So, she unleashed her light-emitting powers to get his attention, forcing Galactus to angrily remove her cosmic powers before sending her home. Now, we have to return to the story of the robot Airwalker. Damaged seemingly beyond repair, following a battle with the Silver Surfer, the supervillain Machine Smith found and repaired Airwalker, but Captain America captured Machine Smith before he could fully revive the Nova Corpsman turned robot Herald. Later, Airwalker awoke in the Machine Smith's lab, suddenly aware he was a machine. The robot befriended a local child, Kevin, who helped him on his quest to find the Silver Surfer. Instead, the robot encountered Thor, who smashed the robot with his hammer during a resulting misunderstanding and conflict. Kevin grieved over his lost friend, leaving Thor to feel that he'd done too much. When Firelord saw footage of the battle on TV, he rushed to the scene where he battled Thor. That is, until Thor offered to let Firelord take his vengeance without fighting back. But Firelord knew that Thor was right, and that vengeance wouldn't revive his friend. After apologizing for his anger, Firelord left for space with Airwalker's robotic remains. He buried them on an asteroid near their homeworld of Xandar, leaving an eternal flame to mark the resting place of his fallen friend. As everyone but Galactus could have predicted, Terrax rebelled again. This time, he returned to Earth and levitated the island of Manhattan, threatening to destroy it if the Fantastic Four didn't help him destroy his master. Galactus immediately defeated his rebellious herald, stripping him of his powers and restoring the island to normal. This act left Galactus so weak that he needed to consume the Earth. He was only stopped by the combined might of the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, and Doctor Strange, who cast the spell known as Images of Icon. This revealed to Galactus the spirits of the billions he had killed over the years. The Devourer screamed, giving Reed just enough time to slingshot Ben into Galactus, leaving him near death. But Reed felt the need to save him. Captain America agreed, saying that he was a sentient being and wasn't acting out of evil intent. Using a power adapter built by Reed and the energy of Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, Galactus was revived. But he was so low on energy, he needed to feed immediately. Even though Reed found 6 uninhabited worlds for Galactus to feed on, Galactus couldn't risk traveling to one without knowing if they had the energy he needed. That's when Frankie Ray, a close friend of the Fantastic Four, volunteered to become Galactus's new herald. He transformed her into the cosmic being Nova, who then left the planet to find Galactus a new snack. And by snack, we obviously mean the throne world of the Skrull Empire. Galactus was now so low on energy that he contemplated his own death, and was haunted by the compassion he used to feel as a mortal man. Death appeared to him, and Galactus asked for his end to be quick. But Death reassured him that he had, quite possibly, the most important role in the universe, and he must not shirk it. And so, committed to his fate, Galactus devoured the Skrull throne world, killing billions and throwing the Skrull Empire into chaos. This act would go on to have massive consequences for the rest of the Marvel Universe, as it led to a Skrull civil war that resulted in even more deaths than the destruction of the throne world. And eventually, the Skrulls attempted to take Earth by hiding amongst Earth's population in what would come to be known as the Secret Invasion. For indirectly causing that destruction by saving Galactus, Reed Richards was put on trial by an interstellar court of survivors of the worlds Galactus had consumed. Reed argued that Galactus must serve some sort of higher purpose, but not even the testimony of the Asgardian All-Father Odin could sway the court. That's when Galactus arrived, stunning the various alien onlookers, who each perceived the world devourer in their own way. Galactus testified on behalf of Richards and even called him friend. That testimony didn't exactly endear Reed to the jury, but even then, they were awed when the Watcher and Galactus summoned Eternity, an abstract being that embodies all that exists, who confirmed Galactus's place in the grand destiny of the universe. Galactus would soon encounter Reed again when both of them were transported to Battleworld by the cosmic being known as the Beyonder during the conflict known as the Secret Wars. Galactus quickly did what he does best and tried to consume the power of the planet, only for Dr. Doom to siphon off his powers, leaving Galactus floating helpless in space. Doom later revealed that Galactus was rescued and taken into space by Nova. Later, the Silver Surfer was finally able to escape his confinement on Earth, thanks to some help from the Fantastic Four. But he soon encountered Galactus, who was ready to return his former herald to exile on Earth. The Surfer offered to instead rescue Nova, who was being held captive by the Skrulls. Galactus agreed, and the Surfer was shocked to realize that Galactus actually cared for his herald. The Surfer quickly freed Nova, returning her to Galactus, who vowed to consume 1,000 Skrull worlds in revenge. The Surfer argued that Galactus must not destroy those worlds, as using his powers for personal vengeance would destroy Galactus's role in the cosmic scheme. Galactus agreed and fulfilled their bargain, pardoning the Surfer and letting him return to the spaceways he loved. One of the greatest threats to Galactus didn't come from Earth, but from a group of beings nearly as old as he was, the Elders of the Universe. The Elders are a group of some of the universe's oldest beings, with each the lone survivor of their respective ancient races. They later became immortal after one of their members, the Grand Master, defeated death in a game back in 1987's Avengers Annual Number 16. The Elders believed that destroying Galactus would collapse the universe, creating a new one where they could reign as new Galacti. The Elders assembled 6 powerful soul gems, which would later become known as the Infinity Stones, to destroy Galactus. They used their power on nearby planets to drain Galactus of his energies. But the Surfer was able to block the beam, allowing Nova to destroy a nearby sun, thus creating a black hole that consumed several of the Elders. The surviving Elders argued that they couldn't be killed, as they had been freed from the specter of death. But Galactus argued that, as the force in reality, between the entities called death and eternity, he would devour them as easily as he devours worlds. Then, gulp. Although, Galactus noted that they were difficult to absorb, and we soon learned that Death did not like Galactus believing he was her equal. We learned just how much Galactus had ticked off Death sometime later, when Nova returned from a mission in space to find a dying Galactus. He explained that the Elders hadn't died, and Nova needed to bring the Silver Surfer and the Fantastic Four's Sue and Reed Richards to him. Galactus revealed that because the Elders couldn't die, their souls were killing him. But if their souls could be put in the Elders' soul gems, their bodies would be harmless. The only problem was that the gems had gone into that black hole, and since one of the gems stole souls, they'd need Sue's force fields to contain it. The Richards and the Surfer traveled inside the black hole and retrieved the soul gems, although one possessed Reed. The gems summoned the In-Betweener, a cosmic being that represented the balance between chaos and order, and who served the even more powerful cosmic beings, Master Order and Lord Chaos. The In-Betweener took the soul gems and allied himself with the remaining Elders, who asked him to kill Galactus for them. However, he soon realized it couldn't be done, as Galactus was unique in the universe and there was no force to counterbalance him. So, the In-Betweener planned to just dump Galactus in the black hole. The Elders objected to the In-Betweener's plan, pointing out that their brother Elders were still inside Galactus and must be rescued. So, the In-Betweener summoned Death itself, who he ordered to kill the Elders before tossing Galactus' ship into the black hole. Meanwhile, the Surfer traveled to Master Order and Lord Chaos to let them know what their servant was up to. The pair of cosmic beings restored Galactus by freeing the Elders he'd consumed from his body. And Galactus, who previously said he was above emotion, declared that the In-Betweener must die. This led to one of the largest fistfights in recorded history, as Galactus and the In-Betweener brawled through space. And while the In-Betweener felt that he was Galactus' counterpart, Galactus claimed he was the absence of opposites, something those who live among opposites cannot explain. He was Galactus. The battle raged on until the combined might of the Surfer, Nova, and the Elders of the Universe's soul gems pushed the pair into the black hole, where Master Order and Lord Chaos captured the In-Betweener. Those Infinity Stones would have a massive effect on the Marvel Universe, as the Mad Titan Thanos later assembled them into the Infinity Gauntlet, which gave him unlimited power over, well, everything. After Thanos used his power to kill half of the living creatures of the universe with one snap, Galactus was forced to side with the heroes of Earth to stop Thanos and reclaim the power of the stones. But soon, Galactus once again suffered from what would become his most common complaint: a disobedient herald. This time, it was Nova, who tried to hide an inhabited world from Galactus, only to have him realize her treachery. As he started to consume the planet, he was confronted by Morg, an executioner who refused to go to the slaughter without a fight. Galactus destroyed the planet, but saved Morg, saying that his new herald would not have the flaws of his previous ones. Flaws like compassion, vulnerability, devotion, or ambition. After dismissing Nova from his service, Galactus bestowed the power cosmic on Morg, making him his new herald, Morg the Berserker. To battle the threat of this new, bloodthirsty herald, the Surfer assembled many of Galactus' former heralds, even resurrecting the robot Airwalker. Terrax agreed to help fight Morg in exchange for his freedom, but made no promises of what he would do afterwards. The battle against Morg wouldn't be easy, as Morg soon stumbled across a mystical well of life, using it to become even more powerful. When the former herald confronted Morg, he now had enough might to take them all on together. The Surfer left the battle to convince Galactus to stop Morg, eventually persuading him that having a bloodthirsty herald would only lead to more conflict, and Galactus would never again know peace. Galactus relented, but refused to admit that the Surfer had coerced him into action. Meanwhile, Morg faced off against Terrax, shattering Terrax's cosmic axe. Nova stopped Morg from finishing Terrax off, only to be blasted in return. The wound was fatal, and Nova died in the Surfer's arms. As the Surfer was ready to take his revenge, Galactus stopped him. Displeased that Morg had destroyed one of his creations, Galactus stripped him of his power cosmic, leaving him with just the powers from the Well of Life, of which Morg had used to gain personal power. The former heralds were now more than a match for Morg, although the Surfer refused to kill him. But Terrax didn't share his pesky morals. After they buried Nova in the heart of a nearby sun, Galactus took Firelord and the repaired Airwalker robot as his new heralds. Terrax claimed Morg's axe as his own, flying off into space. As for Morg, Galactus secretly saved his body in case he needed the Berserker in the future. Later, still having use of his power and loyalty, Galactus resurrected Morg and restored his power cosmic. Morg then attacked Terrax to reclaim his axe. That's when both of them were captured by Galactus's previous creation, the android Tyrant. He'd finally returned from his exile, looking for revenge, and aided by an army of robots. Tyrant also captured the Silver Surfer, along with some other powerful warriors, Gladiator, Beta Ray Bill, Jack of Hearts, and Ganymede, looking to drain them of their powers. They fought back against Tyrant, although Morg couldn't resist fighting Terrax too. But just as Tyrant had defeated everyone, his old boss Galactus showed up, looking for Morg. Galactus admitted that he'd never expected to see Tyrant again, declaring that Tyrant was a threat to the universal stability he desired. Galactus said he'd leave if Tyrant gave over Morg, not caring about what happened to any of the other prisoners. Tyrant refused, saying that Morg was too flush with recent cosmic powers to give up. And just as it seemed they were about to finally battle, Galactus backed down, saying he did so to delay a costly confrontation. Morg was later able to escape from Tyrant, return to Galactus, and defeat Firelord and the Airwalker robot, thus resuming his place as Galactus's herald. With his master's permission, Morg prepared to execute Firelord, only to be stopped by the Surfer. The Surfer almost took his chance to destroy Morg for the murder of Nova, but ultimately couldn't bring himself to do so. Galactus preserved the damaged Airwalker robot by uploading its consciousness into his world ship, where it became part of the operating system. Not long after, Tyrant attacked Galactus, who was defended by the Silver Surfer and Morg. They fought inside of Galactus's world ship, where Morg used the ultimate nullifier on Tyrant, melting most of him. The Surfer tried to stop Morg's attack, but the nullifier soon started to overload. Galactus convinced the Surfer to escape before sealing the ship behind him. The resulting explosion killed Morg, Tyrant, and seemingly Galactus himself, leaving the Surfer to wonder what kind of creature would take Galactus's place. However, Reed Richards soon discovered that Galactus was still alive, but trapped in an interdimensional void. That allowed Reed to use Galactus to defeat Hyperstorm, a future version of his son, Franklin Richards, trapping the two of them in another dimension, where Galactus could feed off of Hyperstorm's powers forever. But soon, Galactus was up to his old tricks, creating a new herald, Red Shift, and even attempting to consume the Earth again. Does Earth just smell irresistible to him? His hunger had now grown to the point where it was driving him mad. Also, his powers had developed to the point where he was only absorbing the life energies of sentient beings and leaving their planets untouched. While Earth's heroes managed to hold him at bay, the Silver Surfer defeated Red Shift and agreed to resume his herald activities if Galactus spared the Earth. But it was a trick, as the Surfer lured Galactus to Chandalar, the Shi'ar homeworld, where a coalition of alien races and Earth's heroes were waiting for battle. As Earth's heroes pressed the attack, the Surfer was able to turn Galactus's energy siphoning tech back on him, mortally wounding him. Galactus warned the Surfer that his madness was only the prelude to a larger threat. In death, Galactus transformed into a star, which Reed Richards theorized would never be able to reform again, which would prove to be completely wrong. As for the horror Galactus warned about, that turned out to be Abraxas, the universal embodiment of destruction, who was freed from his imprisonment by Galactus's death. Millennia ago, Eternity sealed Abraxas away in every reality, with each universe's Galactus keeping him locked in confinement. Now free, Abraxas started killing Galacti from other universes, even sending the skull of one to Earth 616. To fight him, the Fantastic Four teamed up with an alternate version of Nova to find the ultimate nullifier. But when they found it, Abraxas revealed that the alternate Nova was now his herald, stealing the nullifier and releasing an army of alternate universe Novas. But Franklin Richards and an alternate future version of his sister Valeria combined their abilities to revive Galactus. Galactus retrieved the ultimate nullifier, and Reed Richards used it to destroy Abraxas before it erased Reed from existence too. But the erasure of Abraxas reshaped reality, restoring everyone who Abraxas had killed back to life, including Reed. With Galactus causing so many deaths over the millennia, you have to wonder, what would Galan, his original form, think of the world-devouring being he would become? That question was answered during the Antithesis storyline, where Galactus was attacked by a version of Galactus from the Negative Zone, who absorbed Galactus's powers, transforming him back into his Galan form. Galan used the world ship's powers to imbue the Fantastic Four with the power cosmic. Then he used it to reabsorb Galactus's powers from the Antithesis as they returned it to the Negative Zone. Unfortunately, that power ended up in Reed, who turned into Galactus. In this form, Reed finally had the answers to universal questions he'd been asking for years, but he also had Galactus's cosmic hunger. Galan refused to return to being Galactus, describing it as a curse. Luckily, Reed's family was able to convince Reed to give up the answers to be with his family, turning Galan back into Galactus. And Galactus was definitely back to normal for his next appearance, where he attacked planet Rigel 18, only to be opposed by Adam Warlock and his seemingly reformed Thanos. But maybe Galactus had changed, as he was now haunted by the memories of those he'd consumed. His goal wasn't to consume Rigel 18, but to assemble the Infinity Stones, which he believed would finally sate his hunger. However, Galactus was tricked by the Hunger, a universe-sized parasite that fed on whole realities, who used the Infinity Stones to escape into the main Marvel universe. Even Galactus was horrified by Hunger's power, which dwarfed his own. To defeat Hunger, Thanos smashed two planets together, crushing Hunger and Galactus, and though reduced in strength, Galactus survived. Before Thanos left, he gave a warning to Galactus, saying that as mighty as Galactus was, he could not stand against an entire universe. His enemies would be forced to destroy him, and Thanos would stand with them. Galactus's next meeting with Thanos would be on slightly better terms. It started when Thanos visited the intergalactic prison known as the Kiln, where an exchange with the Beyonder nearly destroyed the prison. It also freed Galactus's original herald, the Fallen One, who'd been imprisoned after a fight with Peter Quill, aka Star-Lord. Realizing that the Fallen One would again seek revenge against his former master, who was still recovering from the damage he received during the battle on Rigel 18, Thanos visited a recovering Galactus. There, he learned more about the Fallen One's background, only for them both to be attacked by the former herald, who sought to destroy his old master. Thanos argued that killing Galactus would unbalance the universe, but the Fallen One only wanted vengeance, leading the two to battle in a nearby asteroid field. Thanos soon overpowered the former herald, knocking him into a gas giant before blowing it up. But Thanos spared the Fallen One, taking him as his own herald instead. We soon got another visit from Galan, when the Fantastic Four was approached by a race of aliens known as the Zeus, who had largely been destroyed by Galactus. To hide from him, the Zeus created a device that rendered planets invisible. But there was one thing on Earth that could defeat their invention: Sue Storm's invisibility powers. If Sue wouldn't surrender to them, they threatened to throw Manhattan into the sun. Man, what do all these aliens have against the Big Apple? Before Sue could be executed, Reed used an alien device to remove her powers, and the Zeus returned Manhattan to its normal place. But it was a trick, as Reed hadn't removed Sue's powers, but simply switched them with the Human Torch's flame powers. That's when Galactus appeared and destroyed the Zeus's craft, taking Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, to be his new herald to uncover their invisible homeworld. As they traveled, Johnny tried to stall Galactus by arguing that after 5 billion years of being cosmic, he'd forgotten what it was like to be human. But that deep down, very deep down, he and Johnny were a lot alike. Galactus disagreed. To rescue Johnny, Reed sabotaged Galactus' power converter, removing Johnny's power cosmic and turning Galactus back into Galan. The Fantastic Four took Galan back to New York, where they taught him about humanity by taking him to a dive bar on Yancey Street, the Guggenheim Museum, and shopping in Manhattan. Back at Reed's lab, Galan surprised everyone by activating one of Reed's interdimensional transporters, preparing to send himself to a distant dimension. Why? Because he'd seen the indomitable spirit of the humanoid order, the inability of mankind to surrender before a hopeless future, and who was he to extinguish that in himself? Instead, Galan willingly exiled himself, knowing that the soul of Galactus would stop at nothing to locate him. But this act would give the universe a respite from Galactus' wrath, and an opportunity to find a solution to the finality of Galactus. Despite Galan's sacrifice, when he next saw Galactus, he'd regained his soul and returned to being the cold, unfeeling omen of destruction we all know and love. Kinda. This time, he attacked the planet New Corbin, home of Thor's ally, Beta Ray Bill, wielder of the Asgardian hammer, Stormbreaker. Bill proved powerful enough to wound Galactus, but his efforts were slowed when he was forced to also battle Galactus' new herald, Stardust, along with Bill's Corbinite rival, Alpha Ray. Despite Bill's efforts, Galactus consumed the planet while Stardust received permission to hunt down and destroy all remnants of the Corbinites as an example to others. He quickly destroyed the fleet orbiting New Corbin, discovering the damaged body of Alpha Ray in the process. Some of Bill's race had survived in the form of energy, so Bill battled Stardust to allow them to escape. However, their battle unleashed a demon, Astaroth, who sought to consume all the order in the universe, forcing Bill and Stardust to join forces to try and stop it. Meanwhile, Galactus restored Alpha Ray, sending him to the battle. Alpha tackled Astaroth into a black hole, trapping them both and leaving Bill floating, helpless in space. Over the coming years, Beta Ray Bill would become consumed with the loss of his people, asking Thor to help him claim vengeance against Galactus. Bill's plan was simple: to starve Galactus by destroying any world he attempted to devour. His plan worked, withering Galactus to his bare bones, but at the cost of making Bill unworthy to wield his hammer, Stormbreaker. Before Bill could destroy another planet, the Surfer revealed that if Galactus died, his death throes would destroy all life within 42 light years. Faced with choosing between his vengeance and the deaths of trillions, Bill decided to save Galactus, even fighting off a horde of aliens looking to destroy him themselves. Galactus fed on the destruction of the aliens' attack, rejuvenating him enough to defend himself and save Bill. Afterwards, Galactus asked a grievously injured Bill why he spared him, and Bill admitted that seeking vengeance for his people was the only purpose he had, but he didn't want the legacy of his people to be so much bloodshed. This touched Galactus, and he used his powers to revive the soul of the only Corbinite life energy that hadn't crossed over to the other side, a woman named Ty-Ashara. Later, Bill planned to return Stormbreaker to Asgard, as he considered himself an unworthy custodian. That's when he discovered that his actions had redeemed himself, and he was truly worthy once again. During the Annihilation storyline, Annihilus, the Conqueror and Tyrant from the Negative Zone, attempted to invade the Matter universe with the army of insectoid warriors known as the Annihilation Wave. He allied himself with Tenebrous of the Darkness Between and Aegis, Lady of All Sorrows, survivors of the Promeal Gods, a pantheon of early gods who'd existed at the beginning of this universe, but who'd been trapped by Galactus in the Kiln. Tenebrous and Aegis attacked Galactus and the Surfer, weakening them enough to be captured by Thanos. The Mad Titan then transformed the pair into a living weapon to be used in Annihilus's crusade to destroy every other life form in the universe. But Galactus and the Surfer were freed by Drax and Moondragon, allowing them to unleash their rage as the Galactus event, a massive omnidirectional blast that destroyed most of the Annihilation Wave, ending the invasion. Afterwards, Stardust tracked down Galactus, desperate to regain her place as his herald. When he refused, she sacrificed the surviving members of her species to feed him, impressing him with her devotion. He took her on as his additional herald, keeping Silver Surfer as his main one, as his hunger had now increased enough to need a second servant. Galactus then turned his attention back to Annihilus' allies, the ancient cosmic beings Aegis and Tenebris. The Devourer sent the Surfer to hunt them down and defeat them by luring them into the hyperdense center of the universe known as the Crunch. Galactus next attempted to consume the planet Sakaar, the world that Hulk had ruled during the Planet Hulk storyline. However, Galactus became addicted to the old power within the planet, as its queen, Kyera the Oldstrong, had intended her planet to sate Galactus' appetite for millennia. When Kyera and the Hulk's son Scar interrupted Galactus' consumption, it left the Devourer desperate for more old power. This led Scar's brother Hirokala to the nearby planet of Jazar, where he poisoned the old power to kill Galactus. But Galactus was able to vomit out the energy and leave the planet. Soon, Galactus took up a new quest, searching the galaxy for a Galactus seed, a cosmic relic that was destined to grow into the next universe. This quest pitted Galactus against the Asgardian gods, as the seed had been discovered by Bor, the first king of the Asgardians, who'd used it to create the world tree, Yggdrasil. That's the mystical tree that unites the 9 realms of Norse mythology, including Midgard, also known as Earth. Galactus demanded that Odin turn over the seed to him, but the god refused, convinced that Galactus planned to use the seed to achieve immortality. Galactus responded by attacking Asgard, leading to a battle with the gods. In the heat of the battle, Odin summoned the Destroyer, powering it with the energy of the Galactus seed, which led to Galactus retreating. Meanwhile, Loki hid the seed. The Surfer decided to stay on Earth in case the seed was found. As a replacement herald, the Surfer recruited an Oklahoma pastor named Pastor Mike, who took on the power cosmic, becoming the herald, Praetor. We never saw much of Praetor's time as a herald, but it probably didn't work out well, as Galactus soon put out a Herald Wanted ad, which was answered by Deadpool. Galactus gave him the job, granting him the power cosmic and a sweet, motorized space surfboard. Deadpool's time as a herald would also prove short-lived, however, for not only did Galactus get fed up with Wade's constant yammering, but the Surfer convinced Deadpool to give up the job with a quick pummeling. But while he lost the job, Wade gained some friends in Hog, a support group for former Heralds of Galactus. Of course, this entire tale comes from Deadpool's POV, and according to the Marvel Handbook team, everything in Deadpool's titles are to be considered highly dubious until it is corroborated by someone sane. So we're putting an asterisk on the Herald counter for this one. Not long after, Galactus met with Reed Richards on the moon, telling him that the Earth would soon be broken, and giving Richards a device to summon him when he was needed. The World Devourer revealed that the reason he wanted the Galactus seed was not to make himself immortal, but because whatever grew from it would replace him as Galactus. And he'd vowed to exist until the heat death of this universe, standing alone, watching as everything dies and is reborn. Galactus was true to his word, arriving when Reed summoned him to battle an invasion by the alien race, the Kree. He pointed out that this wasn't the disaster he'd been talking about, but he still said he'd handle the Kree, easily destroying the fleet. The danger Galactus warned about soon revealed itself in the form of 4 mad Celestials who were attempting to conquer the multiverse. Galactus battled the Celestials, holding his own. That is, until they combined into one giant Celestial who blasted Galactus into the Earth. He was saved by the arrival of time-traveling versions of Reed Richards' children, Valeria and Franklin. Adult Franklin used his vast cosmic powers to punch the Celestial before reviving Galactus with a mighty, "To me, my Galactus." Together, they destroyed the combined Celestials before enjoying a quiet moment watching the Earth together. Galactus admitted that he'd always assumed that he would face the heat death of the universe alone. But now, he knew that Franklin would be there with him. Galactus had dreaded, feared, being alone forever. But now, that fear was gone. And as Franklin pointed out, it's a good thing that Galactus wasn't able to eat the Earth, right? But Galactus wasn't the only threat attacking the Earth. Soon the planet was conquered by the evil robot Ultron, who succeeded in annihilating almost all of Earth's population with his Ultron drones. Luckily, 2 of the survivors were Wolverine and Sue Richards, who used Dr. Doom's time machine to repeatedly travel back in time and prevent Ultron's rise to power, destroying the robot conqueror once and for all. But there was a price to all those time travel shenanigans, as it fractured the space-time continuum, causing a multiversal chaos event that sent various beings off into different universes. One of those affected was Galactus, who found himself in Earth 1610, also known as the original Ultimate Universe. Now, there was another Galactus in this universe, but it was very different from the classic Earth 616 version. This one was known as Galactus, and was a swarm of giant robotic drones that had been created ages ago by the alien race known as the Kree. After the Kree lost control of their creations, the drones wandered the galaxy, consuming every life-bearing planet in their path. To warn other civilizations, the Kree created an advanced robot known as the Vision, which traveled ahead of the swarm, giving doomed planets a brief warning before moving on to the next. As the Earth 616 Galactus emerged, it was confronted by its ultimate counterpart, but instead of fighting each other, the two beings merged together, creating an even more powerful Galactus. With that power came increased hunger, and Galactus sent out part of the swarm as his heralds to find new worlds to consume. This new Galactus battled the ultimate versions of the Silver Surfer, known as the Silver Searcher, Rick Jones, who had gained superpowers from the ultimate versions of the Watcher, and the Kree hero, Captain Mar-Vell, who was mortally injured fighting the swarm. However, Rick Jones donned Mar-Vell's armor, taking on the name of Captain Marvel, and using his new power to banish the Galactus swarm to a distant part of the galaxy. The Earth 616 Galactus, however, was sent to Ultimate Earth, where he was confronted by the Ultimate Vision. While it tried to convince Galactus to return to his original universe, Galactus responded by simply destroying the android. Galactus descended upon the Earth, setting up his elemental converter, only to be opposed by the combined might of the Ultimates and the X-Men, including a giant Kitty Pryde, who'd used the Giant Men's serum to grow large enough to destroy his converter. Ultimate Reed Richards managed to open a portal to the Negative Zone, through which Thor pushed the Giant Menace, although he was trapped alongside him. Galactus was eventually found in the Negative Zone by Icarus, a member of the alien race known as the Eternals. Icarus brought him back to the dimension of Earth 616 to use him as a weapon against that dimension's version of the Kree. And to be fair, Galactus had proven to be really good at blowing up the Kree. Galactus was soon reunited with the Silver Surfer when the World Devourer attempted to consume the planet New Haven, a planet colonized by the survivors of races consumed by Galactus. Learning of the Surfer's becoming a herald to save his planet, the inhabitants of the planet offered to become his new herald if he would spare New Haven. But Galactus rejected their offers, arguing that he'd already destroyed their worlds, so they had nothing to offer him. At the time, the Surfer was traveling with his new love, human Dawn Greenwood. To save New Haven, she offered herself up as a herald, as the Earth hadn't been destroyed. But after the Surfer admitted his love for her, the planet's inhabitants decided to spare her from a life of servitude by just abandoning the planet. Galactus consumed the planet, and the Surfer agreed to become the herald for New Haven's population, leading them on a search for a new planet to settle. Galactus' hunger next brought him to one of the most improbable confrontations of his existence, as he attempted to consume Earth again, only to face the superhero Squirrel Girl on the moon. There, the two bonded over their shared opinion that Thanos was a tool. To satisfy Galactus' hunger, Squirrel Girl offered him the planet Newtopia 25, a world full of energy-rich tree nuts, earning Galactus' thanks and friendship. To be more proactive in fighting all those cosmic threats that kept threatening the Earth, Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel, created a new team, the Ultimates. Their mission was to go out and find solutions to galactic problems before they threatened Earth, including finding a solution to Galactus' cosmic hunger. Using Galactus' original incubation chamber, they transformed him from the World Devourer to the Lifebringer, giving him the power to bestow life on lifeless planets, starting with Archaeopia, the very first planet he devoured. Remember all that Wolverine time travel that shattered the universe? When the Ultimates tried to leave the universe to assess how much damage it had done, Eternity asked Galactus to stop them. He did, sending them back to Earth. But once outside the reach of Eternity, Galactus discovered what the cosmic being was trying to hide. That Eternity and the Omniverse itself was in chains. Galactus set out to find Eternity's cosmic jailer, transforming the Anti-Man into his Herald of Life, and sending him to reassemble the Ultimates, who had been forcibly disbanded by the US government. Through Anti-Man and America Chavez, Galactus reassembled the Ultimates, but before they could investigate Eternity, Galactus was summoned to the Superflow, an informational space between universes. There, he was placed on trial by Master Order and Lord Chaos, who objected to Galactus' new role as Lifebringer, saying it violated cosmic order. However, the Living Tribunal ruled in Galactus' favor, saying that his role in this new reality was still being defined. Furious, Master Order and Lord Chaos killed the Living Tribunal, only to discover that Galactus was now on their level, leaving them powerless to change the Lifebringer back. To counter this, Order and Chaos combined with their servant, the In-Betweener, to form a new being, Logos. After a brief struggle, Logos managed to return Galactus to his original Devourer form, now even hungrier than before. The cause of Eternity's bondage turned out to be the first firmament, the embodiment of the first cosmos. You see, every universe that had been created and destroyed had a being that encompassed everything inside it, like how the seventh cosmos was embodied by Eternity. The first universe had been shattered by a war caused by the Celestials at the beginning of, well, everything. And now, the first firmament was feeding on Eternity, who'd been rendered weak after the universe was rebuilt during 2015's Secret Wars. But Galactus was saved when the Anti-Man sacrificed himself to restore Galactus to his Lifebringer form. While recovering from his injuries, Galactus assembled the Eternity Watch, a group of cosmic beings formed for the purpose of combating the first firmament and freeing Eternity. The roster included Ego Prime, a warrior created from the energy of the living planet Ego, the powerful psychic known as Psyhawk, the giant dimensional explorer known as the Infinite, and the ghost of the reality-manipulating being called the Shaper of Worlds. With the help of the Black Panther's astral form and some reborn Celestials, the Eternity Watch defeated the first firmament's warriors. Eternity summoned the Ultimate Ultimates, made up of all the personifications of previous universes, to his aid, finally defeating the first firmament. Later, when Ultron planned to launch rockets from the planet Safe to infect the universe with the combined might of the Ultron virus and the Soul Gem, the Surfer pleaded with Galactus to consume the planet to save the galaxy. Galactus did so, becoming the Devourer of Worlds again, abandoning his Lifebringer persona and abilities. Thor, now king of Asgard, was surprised to witness a wounded Galactus crash into his kingdom. Before collapsing, Galactus revealed that he came to ask Thor for help from the Black Winter, a cosmic being that consumed whole universes. Thor assembled an army of Asgardians and cosmic beings to fight the Black Winter, with Galactus granting Thor the power cosmic, transforming him into the Herald of Thunder. Galactus directed Thor to 5 worlds across the universe that would give him the power to defeat the Black Winter, whose coming was prophesied to herald the coming of Ragnarok, the destruction of Asgard. As Black Winter fought Thor and Galactus, it took the form of a Dark Thor. That's when Black Winter claimed that Galactus had lied about his origins, and that Galactus was actually Black Winter's herald, recruited as Galan back in the previous universe. Galactus denied the charge, but a furious Thor drained the Devourer of his power, leaving him a withered shell. Thor used the combined might of himself and Galactus to destroy Galactus and the Black Winter together, even constructing a hall on Asgard out of Galactus' helmet. But soon, Galactus would be needed again, as the Reckoning War, a universe-wide battle between the Watchers and an alien race known as the Reckoning, began to destroy Eternity. In response, Galactus' heralds traveled to Asgard and channeled their power into Galactus' body to resurrect him. As a former herald, the Destroyer was also summoned, growing to the size of a giant, and merging with Galactus to create a new being, the Destruction. The Destruction devastated much of the Reckoning army, but the energy from a bomb separated Galactus from the Destroyer and returned him to his normal state. The Surfer asked him if he hungered, but Galactus only hungered for knowledge, desiring to learn about the universe around him. He required a herald, and while the Surfer refused to take up his old post, he agreed to travel as Galactus' companion. And so, the two set out to travel the universe, each finally fulfilling the destiny they'd yearned for as Galan and Norrin Radd, to explore. Galactus made his grand entrance into the MCU in Marvel Studios' The Fantastic Four: First Steps. As in the original comics, Galactus' arrival on Earth was preceded by his herald, the Silver Surfer. Looking to prevent their world's destruction, the Fantastic Four traveled to Galactus' world ship, where he gave them a choice: either let him consume the Earth, or let him have Sue and Reed's unborn child. They refused, returned to Earth, and spent months building a network of teleport bridges to send the Earth across the galaxy and out of Galactus' reach. But just as the teleporters were about to activate, the Surfer returned and destroyed a large number of the teleport stations. However, Johnny managed to stop her by confronting her with audio of the planets she destroyed. She left, but not before issuing a warning that they needed to give Galactus Sue and Reed's baby, who they'd named Franklin. With the teleport bridge in Manhattan still working, the Fantastic Four decided to lure Galactus to it, using Franklin as bait as part of a plan to strand Galactus across the universe. When he refused to fall into the trap, Sue was forced to use all of her powers to push him through the bridge, only for him to quickly re-emerge from it. That's when the Surfer returned and sacrificed herself to push Galactus through the bridge, allowing the Fantastic Four to seal Galactus away across the universe. And that is our Galactus-sized, yet still abridged, summary of Galactus. Want to learn more? Sign up for Marvel Unlimited to access decades of Galactus' eating habits. If you're curious, here's the full list of comics referenced in this video. You can also find current and upcoming issues of the Fantastic Four, available where your favorite comics are sold. And catch Marvel Studios' The Fantastic Four: First Steps, now streaming on Disney+. This has been Marvel Recap Galactus.